Welcome and thank you for standing by. All participants are in a listen-only mode for the duration of today's session. Today's session is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to your host, Edward Watkins from the U.S. Census Bureau. Ed, you may begin.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on navigating the annual Integrated Economic Census, or AIES. Again, my name is Edward Watkins. I'm thrilled to see such a great turnout for today's discussion. Thank you all for joining us today. Whether you're a seasoned data user or a potential new respondent, your participation is invaluable. And again, I really appreciate your interest today. We're really excited to share with you an overview and just some general guidance to assist respondents in completing this new survey. Before we dive into the heart of our discussion, I do have a few administrative notes that I'd like to cover quickly. A recording of this webinar and the slide deck that you're seeing today will be available, say, about a week after the webinar this morning. We will post the link to the recording and the slide deck on the AIES website once it is available. We'll get you those links. Important note, to uphold the confidentiality of potential survey respondents, this is our obligation to you. We've disabled the Q&A and chat features for this webinar. Please email us at the address that you see on the slide here, econ.aies.help@census.gov, and we'll be monitoring those questions that come in, and then we'll address as many as we can at the end of the speaking portion of the presentation. We'll strive to answer as many as we can, but in the allotted time that we have. But please rest assured that we will be responsive and get to those, even if we're not getting to them by the time we're done today. Also, one last thing, after you close the webinar, you'll see a short evaluation survey. We want to ensure that the webinar meets your needs. And again, thank you in advance for giving us valuable feedback to help us on future webinars and counsel for you. Okay, before we get started, I'd like to introduce our primary speakers for today, Bill Yoder and Brian Wells. Bill and Brian bring a wealth of expertise to the table, and they'll be guiding us through some vital information on AIES to get you started. I also want to introduce our panelists, Belinda Metcalf and Jenna Morris, who along with me will be moderating the questions that come in via email and any discussion. And then lastly, Lisa Donaldson, who's the survey director of the AIES. So without further delay, I will hand it over to Bill to kick off our discussion. Thanks again.
Thank you, Eddie. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Bill Yoder, and I'm here with Brian Wells. We are part of the team implementing the Census Bureau's new annual Integrated Economic Survey, the AIES. We're excited to have you join us today, whether you're just being introduced to the AIES, whether you've been following our progress over the past several years, and we're especially grateful to those of you who have provided feedback and input contributing to the development of the new system. Let's go over what we'll cover today. While planning this webinar, we tried to focus on the topics that we thought would be most interesting and impactful to you, the IAES respondents. Today, we will summarize the purpose and benefits of the AIES, summarize an overview of the key dates to keep in mind, walk you through preparing and submitting your response, introduce you to some tools and resources that will simplify the survey response, and as Eddie said, answer questions. We only have an hour or so, so in order to get through the material we have to defer questions until the end. The email address for questions will be visible at the bottom of the screen on many slides as we go through. Please send questions to that address. We have several people monitoring that account. And as Eddie said, please help us to keep all questions, answers, and survey participation anonymous by wording your questions appropriately. And we will share a recording of this webinar, the slides, the Q&A, the links to all the websites mentioned to you each time sometime in the next week or so. So I want to take just a few minutes to give you some background on the history and scope of this initiative. The Census Bureau conducts and publishes the results of several economic surveys each year to give Americans a rolling snapshot of many aspects of our evolving business environment. Today, we are considering 7 specific legacy surveys that Census has collected and published annually. You see these on the screen. They are the Service Annual Survey, the Manufacturer's Unfilled Order Survey, the Report of Organization, the Annual Survey of Manufacturers, the Annual Wholesale Trade Survey, the Annual Retail Trade Survey, and the Annual Capital Expenditure Survey. Historically, the data for each of these publications has been collected independently. Each was a separate survey of industry using a different data collection instrument with a different due date. But running these 7 legacy surveys independently created a lot of duplication of effort, both on the part of Census to collect, tabulate, and reconcile the data, and by you, the respondents, who often had to answer multiple surveys that were sometimes overlapping and felt redundant. So in 2016, the Census asked the National Academy of Sciences panel to review our survey program and recommend ways that we could improve efficiency and response rates, improve our products, and reduce costs. We wanted to find ways to stay relevant and to better meet the public's needs for timely, granular, and standardized data. NAS reviewed the Economic Directorate's portfolio of annual surveys and provided recommendations for how Census could harmonize and simplify the questionnaire and data collection process to reduce the burden on industry, improve the effectiveness, efficiency, and quality of data sampling, estimation, imputation, and disclosure control, and give users better products that are more accessible, more easily mined, and better targeted toward what you want and need. And finally, and this was the most conspicuous recommendation, combining the 7 previous surveys into a single annual integrated economic survey, the AIES. Census immediately formed a team to start planning scope and figure out how to implement those recommendations. Designing and implementing the AIES has been a huge collaborative effort involving many people from across the Bureau and federal government working together with the public to define requirements, test new functionality and processes, discuss and address concerns, and ultimately bring us to where we are today, launching a new integrated solution that uses cutting-edge tools to align and coordinate the survey lifecycle, broaden the depth and quality of collection, while reducing the burden on you, the respondents. Looking at the high-level timeline on the bottom of the screen, you'll see that the development process has actually proceeded right on schedule. Our first full-scale data collection begins now, and the first iteration of analysis is scheduled to be released in the summer of 2025. Perhaps most important, we also expect the system and the data to further evolve in the years ahead, providing Census with a new foundation for introducing new and better products to better serve the public by providing more accurate, coherent, relevant, and timely economy-wide data for a broader community of data users. The Census Bureau will be sending out invitations to the actual survey instrument starting March 15th, this week and next. All respondents will receive this invitation by physical mail, and you will also receive an email if Census has an email address for your company, and that email will provide a link to help you get into the system. The due date for the survey is April 30th, and please note, if you receive the survey, we thank you for responding, and we want to make it as easy as possible for you to submit your response. So now we are going to walk through the process of responding, and after that, I'll go over some resources that will help you respond. I'm going to turn things over to Brian Wells now, and he will give you an overview of the survey instrument that you will all be receiving a link to over the next few days.
Thanks, Bill. So I'm going to use a hypothetical company to show you a very quick peek at the AIES collection tool. There's no need to take notes or feel rushed, because when I'm done, Bill is going to show you where to find all this information so that if you wish, you can go over it at your own pace. So back in 1999, in my imagination, I founded a hypothetical medium-sized census cat company. We started as a specialty cat food producer, and later we opened a retail location. And I'm excited to announce that last year I opened our first cat spa and resort destination. Previously, a company like mine would have been required to complete up to 5 separate surveys with 5 staggered due dates. And I might need to speak to many different census contexts throughout the year each time I had a question or they had a question. Now imagine the challenge this presents to companies that have to respond to all 7. Maybe some of you here today fall into that category. Well, help has arrived. AIES condenses everything down to one survey with one set of questions and one annual due date. It also reduces the need to deal with so many different census contexts when I need to get support or the census has questions. That's good for me, my company, and my bottom line. But before I show you the collection tool, I want to just talk about a term that you may have heard before, NAICS codes. The North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS, falls under the guidance of the Office of Management and Budget. Every company, including yours, has already been assigned one or several NAICS codes, even if you don't care and never know what they are. These codes help the Census Bureau and other agencies and even private companies like yours to conduct consistent and standardized data collection and comparison. You don't have to know your NAICS codes, but Bill and I will show you how it can benefit you if you do. So back to my hypothetical census cat company. What NAICS code or codes apply to my company? When I started manufacturing cat food in the 90s, our manufacturing establishment was classified under NAICS code 311111. When I added the retail store, that added NAICS code 453910, and my most recent addition gave us NAICS code 812910. Census uses these NAICS codes to determine which survey questions I'll be asked to complete. Generally, the more NAICS codes, the more and more varied questions I'm asked. So Census knows these NAICS codes, and they're going to ask me the questions whether I know my codes or not. Nothing bad happens if I don't know my NAICS codes ahead of time or ever. But something good can come if I know them beforehand. And in a minute, Bill's going to show you how to get your codes if you want. And once you have your codes, you can go to the Census website and view and download a complete list of every AIES survey question you'll be asked right after this presentation if you want. But maybe you're like me, and you're a procrastinator, and you'll just wait to see your questions until you log into your census survey. That's okay too. In my case, I didn't take my own advice, I didn't look up my NAICS codes, and I didn't get to preview my questions. So the screen you're currently seeing is showing you everything I know about my survey questions ahead of time. Not to worry. Once my census letter or email arrives, I'll sign into the portal, I'll enter the authorization code I was provided, and I'll select Report Now to start. The Report Now option starts walking me logically through the survey questions that apply to me based on those NAICS codes that I never looked up. Since I'm only just now starting the work of collecting response data, I'll probably need to return to this page many times so that I can view more questions and input more answers prior to the submission deadline. We can see right here at the initial login menu that I also have options to request a filing extension, to provide access to other people in my company for whom I might want to delegate some of this work, and to get support via secure messages or by phone. I'll leave Bill to review that housekeeping stuff in a few minutes, but first let's look at the AIES collection tool. So finally, here's what I see after I select Report Now. I see the AIES collection tool that is ready to walk me through a logical 3-step process. And it does this regardless of how simple or complex my company or my survey questions may be. 3 steps, once yearly, with one due date. Let's look at step 1. First, notice that each step can have multiple tabs, so it's important to select, review, and complete each tab, or you haven't finished your survey. For step 1, all the real work happens in the Verify Location tab that we see here. Feedback that we got from earlier survey participants, just like you and probably some of you here today, told us that you wanted more flexibility to review, confirm, and update your location information easily and directly. So companies with multiple establishments and locations ask to be able to filter their locations using things like state and zip code, to add and correct locations without having to contact Census. And some ask to have the option to download this list onto a local spreadsheet, update it offline, and then re-upload your answers. In my Census Cat Company example, step 1 presents me with an online spreadsheet listing all my company's locations and establishments as recorded at census. White fields are editable and grayed out fields are view only. In the column at the far right, I can see my NAICS codes in case I'm interested in this. As you can see, I only have 3 locations, so I'm just going to review and make any needed corrections right here on the screen in the white fields. Someday, when I have expanded Census Cat Company into every market, state, and territory, I'll opt to download the step 1 spreadsheet, review and update that, and then return to the AIES collection tool and upload the result. After I've completed step 1, AIES takes me to step 2, where it collects company level data such as total company revenue, employment and payroll, capital expenditures and assets. Based on our research and what you asked for, we now take the information you provide in steps 1 and 2 to make things easier for you in step 3. For example, AIES pre-populates some of the step 3 fields so you don't have to recheck and re-enter details that you already provided. It also uses your prior responses to refine and focus which survey questions it may ask. And here's the first step 2 form I'm asked to complete. It's pretty straightforward, and once I fill it out and select Save and Continue, AIES will present me with a series of other similar straightforward forms asking me about my company's revenue figures. And Bill's going to show you how to get guidance and context about many of these questions should you not quite understand what we want. Just a reminder, if you send questions or comments to the email address listed below, please do not include those kinds of details about your company or anything that might be considered sensitive or confidential. Those are the sorts of things that you would want to submit via the email address link that I showed you before and that Bill's going to show you again. For those kinds of questions, use the secure email account option at the moment. Now, finally, we arrive at step 3, the meat and potatoes of data collection for my company's industry and establishment notes. And this is where many respondents asked us to streamline things and add some functionality. This is where many of you ask for our forms to be clean and simple, but also to give the option for detailed instructions if you had questions about the survey. So the first thing we did was offer every respondent 2 options for collection entry. Any respondent can use either method, so choose yours based on your specific circumstances and preferences. Some smaller companies probably, especially those with just a few enterprises like mine, may opt to respond completely online via the IES interface. Other companies, even some small ones, may opt to download their spreadsheet and then re-upload and complete. But I might choose the spreadsheet option because it lets me, I can use drag and drop, copy and paste as I'm going through and getting answers to my questions. I can filter and hide columns in my spreadsheet and do things, anything I can do in a full-featured spreadsheet program. This option may also be best for companies with cybersecurity or other technical issues that limit or restrict internet access to the census website. You may wish to delegate responsibility to different people or different offices in your company to research particular questions, and it's easy to do that if you copy and paste and move around questions in that spreadsheet. You may also want to compartmentalize which employees see responses to sensitive or confidential information. By downloading your survey spreadsheet, you can break out and separately assign those questions. And then someone with the proper authority can then collect, recombine, and upload the answers. Please note the multiple tabs at the top. Again, it's critical to view and complete each tab. In this view, we're looking at the detailed data tab, and the same basic process applies. Review the gray fields, complete the white fields, and then save the changes. Everyone sees this product data manufacturing only tab, but its fields will be grayed out if you're not a manufacturer. You do have that manufacturing component, though. Complete this tab, just like all the others. Check Data reviews your responses across all tabs in step 3 and identifies any fields that you may have missed or that need your attention. Once you've addressed your errors, select Save and Continue. I hope that very quick preview of the AIES collection tool wasn't too rushed, but if you felt that way, Bill's going to show you some web-based and other resources available for you to access and review at your own pace. He'll also show you how to find your NAICS codes and how to use them to download that advanced list of your company's survey questions. You can start reviewing them today if you like and get a head start. That's all for me, and now back to Bill.
Thank you, Brian. So the Census Bureau is providing several resources to help you complete your survey. These include a variety of summaries and instructions, instructional videos, and multiple pathways for getting help. I want to take a few minutes to introduce some of the key resources that are available to help you prepare your respond. Most of these resources are available through the AIES website. Many of you are already familiar with this website, which was launched in December 2022 and has been used to keep the public informed of our progress throughout development. It is now being updated to provide new tools for respondents. The website still provides links to relevant Federal Register notices, information about previous annual surveys transition to AIES, and other related information. Framed in red on the slide, Brian, we seem to be lagging. There it is. The site also provides information about the methodology we use for sample design, which you can access following the link to technical documentation, which is framed in yellow here. So go ahead and geek out if that's your interest. And what is most relevant to you, though, to most of you anyway, is the new information for respondents link. This link provides tools to help you formulate your response to the survey. As this slide shows, this is where you go when you are ready to report, and it is where you will find all the resources that I am about to summarize. When you click on the Information for Respondents tab, two of the first items you will see are the content summary and the instruction manual. The content summary provides an outline, a high-level summary of the survey structure and content. The instruction manual provides more detailed guidelines for gathering and inputting your data. Both the content summary and the instruction manual follow a similar format and use similar conventions. In the reference key on the right, you see some of these conventions that will help you navigate the tool. For example, specific icons have been used to mark the questions appropriate for each trade, and every topic or subtopic in both the content summary and the instruction manual will be labeled with an icon indicating the applicable industry, trade, or trades. You can see it there, the reference key, A for agriculture, C for construction, etc. There's another convention worth noting. Questions in italics are only asked of a subset of the industries within a trade. For example, there may be questions that are not asked of all manufacturers, but are only asked for the manufacturers of cat toys. The information requested and the questions asked in the AICS are largely based on the questions that were asked in legacy surveys. So if you're familiar with those legacy surveys, these questions will be familiar. The content summary provides a list of these questions, all of the information that will be collected for each trade and industry. It lists all of the categories of information that will be collected at each level. And you can see the levels here. All trades will get company level questions and ownership level questions. And you see the icons for all of the industry screen groups at the top of the screen here, showing that these questions apply to all of those industries. At the center of the page on the bottom, you see below the company level content, you see a heading for detailed employment and payroll, and that is associated with the M icon. That shows you that only manufacturing industries will get this set of questions. And finally, over on the right of the screen, you see a list of special items, questions under the heading truck and transportation industries with an S indicated that these are service industries. Notice that these questions are in italics, and that means that not all the service trades will get these questions, only the truck transportation industries. Trucking is just an example. Many other industries will get targeted questions, but these will always be listed in italics. Now let's look at the instruction manual. The instruction manual provides more details about each of the requested categories of information, and it provides instructions for what data you are expected to provide with each response. While the content summary just provides a list of the information required for each industry, the instruction manual provides detailed descriptions of what that information should and should not include. Let me first point out a couple of things about the instruction manual. First, in the table of contents, there are 3 items that are specific to the instruction manual and not included in the content summary. This includes information about the survey's validity, the burden statement, and definitions of the collection units. Those are all provided here. Once you get past those items, you will get to the specific data items, which can be navigated through hyperlinks. This is the information that's in the instruction manual, but not in the content summary. Here you see an example of the additional data that you can find in the instruction manual. In this case, regarding detailed information about the cost of fringe benefits. Looking at this example, you can see what information to include among the data you submit. Insurance premiums, employer costs for pension plans, defined contribution plans and fringe benefits, and what to exclude. Employee contributions, disbursements from trust or funds to satisfy health insurance claims. And finally, note the S icon. This shows you that this item is only required for service industry companies and not for other trades. Okay, now we're going to go to another useful set of tools that you can access from the web page, a set of how-to videos and instructional PDFs. These provide a robust set of tutorial videos and printable instructions for how to complete various aspects of the survey. And these go through everything that Brian described in more detail, and they provide a lot of additional guidance as well. A few of the videos are displayed on this slide. Now, I should note that this page is still being updated to reflect the 2023 AIES. Many of the new videos will be posted this week. Most of them will be posted next week, and all should be available sometime in the next couple of weeks to help you fill out your survey. So if you're looking for something and cannot find it, come back tomorrow or next week, and it might be there. Okay. Many of you may find the question preview tool to be the most helpful of all these resources. Brian referred to this before. This tool has 2 primary uses. You can use it to find your NAICS code, as Brian mentioned, and you can use it to preview the questions that will be asked of all trades and industries within a particular NAICS code. Everything in the system is organized by NAICS code, and you need to know your NAICS code in order to navigate the question preview tool. As we said, many of you already know your NAICS code, but if you don't, Census provides 3 ways to find out what it is. 2 of these use the question preview tool, and I'll demonstrate both of these in a second. But before I do, I want to reiterate that you don't need to know your NAICS code before you start to submit your response. You have the option to wait until you are ready to start inputting your submission, and the NAICS code will be displayed in your survey collection instrument after you sign in. Log into the portal using the credentials sent to you by the Census Bureau, access your survey card, select Report Now, and your NAICS code will be visible. But if you want to use the preview tool, you need to know your NAICS tool. There are 2 ways to find it. The first method of searching for a NAICS code is to climb down the hierarchy until you find the right code. When you open the question preview tool, you will see a pick list of high-level codes, 1 for each trade. Just pick the code that seems most applicable and proceed down the tree until you find the code that best fits your business. For example, if you are looking for manufacturers of cat food, you would select manufacturing and then food manufacturing and the dog and cat food manufacturing option to find your NAICS code. If you select the wrong code and you realize that as you're going down the tree, you can go back up the tree as needed. Once you find your NAICS code, you can use the tabs at the top of the screen to reveal the establishment questions, industry questions, and company questions that will be asked for that NAICS code. The second way to find your NAICS code is the search method. Simply enter the trade or industry that you're looking for in the search box at the top of the screen. For example, searching for cat food manufacturers, you might type food and click the magnifying glass to search. This will generate a pick list of options from which you may choose. Now, a couple of things to be aware of with the search tool. You may need to scroll down the pick list to see the results that aren't displayed on the screen and find the NAICS code you were looking for. And whatever keyword you input needs to precisely match the language used in the NAICS code. You won't find cat if you type feline, or even if you type cats. So you may have to experiment a little bit to find the code you want. Once again, once you find your NAICS code, simply click on the Questions tab at the top of the screen to display the list of questions for that NAICS code. And if you already know your NAICS code, you can simply input it in the search box to pull down and preview your survey questions. You can also retrieve questions for multiple NAICS codes at once if you find that helpful, which you might, for example, if your enterprise crosses multiple trades or industries, such as the cat company that Brian described earlier. A couple of other features in the question preview tool are also worth noting. First, when you pull down your questions, you will notice that some of them include a small eye icon. This means there's more information available to help you answer the question. When you click the eye, instructions for answering will pop up in an information box. For example, at the top of the screen where you see multiple NAICS codes displayed, it provides a list of what those NAICS codes are. Or down below, you see instructions on what information you should or should not provide in response to any question. I also want to point out the three buttons at the top right of the screen. The one on the farthest right, the download button, is probably the most important. You can use this to download all the selected questions and their definitions into a spreadsheet. So once you see that list of questions, you can download that list and collect all your data offline. You can share the spreadsheet with coworkers who need to provide data, etc., so that you can to help you compile your responses, and later you can input the information directly into the AIES survey instrument. Note that you cannot upload directly from that spreadsheet into the instrument. Unlike the downloading process that Brian described, you cannot use the question preview tool data for data input. It's only a preview that you can use to gather our data offline. So hopefully it will help you. Many people have asked for it. Continuing right to left at the top of the screen, you will see the Instructions tab. This will return you to the instruction screen that we showed you before. This will be available at all points as you're using the question preview tool. And finally, you see a tab that will return that brings you to the frequently asked questions. I should note that Census Bureau is still developing this list of questions and the responses. There are several questions already loaded. There will be more. The intention is for this list to reflect the questions that we receive most frequently. The AIES has been thoroughly tested, but it is still a new tool, and we are still learning which questions will be most useful to you and to answer here. So this list may evolve. In fact, you are helping the tool to develop this tool right now. Later today and this week, we will be going through the questions that have been input during this webinar to determine whether any of those should be added to our list. The last tool that I want to go over is the AIES landing screen. This is the first screen that you see after you log into the system to input your AIES data. Brian showed you this screen earlier, but I want to remind you of the links that are here to help you. Here, you can request an extension if you need more time to complete your survey. You can check your filing status, or you can access frequently asked questions, or you can send a confidential message to Census staff. And as Brian mentioned, unlike the questions sent to the email on the screen during this webinar, these are confidential and only a staff member who knows who you are and can communicate with you directly with details will see it. And finally, you can call survey support. There's an 800 number provided there. Live tools to all of these, live links to all of these tools will be made available to you when we send out the follow-up to this webinar. And of course, all of these resources can be accessed right now through the website census.gov/AIES. That concludes my presentation, but I'm sure you still have lots of questions, and I know that a lot of questions have been submitted throughout this webinar. Our panel has been reviewing those questions, answering those that they can, and flagging many for verbal response. So at this point, I'd like to call on our panel who will respond to some of those questions that you have entered and that you may still be entering into the Q&A box. So at this point, I'm turning things over to Lisa Donaldson, Jenna Morse, Ed Watkins, and Belinda Metcalf.
Thank you, Bill and Brian. Appreciate it. True to Bill's words, we did have a good deal of questions come in. Let's see what we can sift through here. Okay, here's one. Can I see a list of the companies that will receive the AIS? So the Census Bureau is barred from releasing any information that could identify an individual business or an organization. We keep that very tight. We tightly safeguard that confidentiality using our cybersecurity measures and other things in-house just to make sure that we uphold that. So not allowed to publicly list the names of companies. What else? Okay, I've gotten a couple of variations of these questions. Is the AIS mandatory? Can my business be excused from participating? So no, the survey is required by law. Congress has deemed that this survey is so important that any business contacted to be included is required to complete and fill out the survey to the extent that they can. What if my company does not have the data that are required or requested in AIS? So in general, we accept estimates to the extent that you have if your company doesn't keep their books the same way in which we ask those questions. One thing that I'll add to that is I'll say part of us trying to evolve and continue to be dynamic is I think we do want to start to talk to companies a little bit more and get a better sense of how books are kept. If the questions that we're asking don't necessarily align with the way most people's books are, most companies' books are, I do think that is something that we will address and evolve over time with our content. Okay, I'll do one more and then I'll kick it over to Belinda. When will I receive my official invitation and authorization code to complete the AIS? So, you're excited to hear this. The Census Bureau, we will begin mailing as soon as this Friday, the 15th. I think it's when we start putting things in the mail. And emails will start being distributed, I'd say early next week, as soon as March 18th. So be on the lookout for those. If you received an advance email, I imagine that many of you did. That's how you got here today, letting you know that you are included in this survey. And you should expect to, again, receive an email or letter no later than the end of this month. Okay, I'll pass it over to Belinda. Lisa, is it, did you want to say a couple of words? I'm sorry. Okay. Belinda, you want to take a couple?
Sure, I'll take a few questions. So we are getting a lot of questions coming into the inbox. Like Eddie said, we will address some of the common questions that are coming through, some of the questions that are coming from multiple folks. We will respond to the emails after the webinar, so we will follow up if we didn't get to your question today. One question that came through was about sharing survey access. So in the presentation, you saw where you could either fill the survey out on the online spreadsheet in step 3, or you could actually download it as well. So when you share survey access in the tool, then it's the entire survey. However, if you opt to download the spreadsheet, then you can parse that out. So I know that there's a lot of companies that have, sensitive information between areas. So you can parse that spreadsheet out as long as that information, once it's completed, it comes back to you, and then it's compiled into that master spreadsheet that can be re-uploaded into the collection instrument. So there are ways to parse that spreadsheet out. A lot of questions coming in asking if the slide deck will be available. As it was mentioned earlier, we will have a recording that will be available on our AIES website, census.gov/AIES. We will also post the slide deck. It won't be available for about a week, so we need to go through some transcription of the webinar and some other things, but those materials will be available on the website once this is complete. So look for it in about a week or so. Extensions, a lot of questions asked about, can we get extensions on the survey? And the answer is yes. You'll notice that when you log into the portal, you will put your authentication code in, you'll access your survey card, and there's an option right there where you can request an extension beyond that April 30th date. I know that date can be tight for folks, especially with taxes and other obligations that need to be filed for your companies. Will there be new questions in the AIES that we've never seen before? So the short answer to that is not really. Most of the questions that make up the AIES were pulled from these 7 legacy annual surveys. However, they may look a little bit different. We have gone through and we've tried to standardize and harmonize the questions across the different surveys. So we had some surveys that were asking the same question, but maybe they used a little bit different language. So we have standardized that verbiage, but there's no questions that are brand new that did not exist in these legacy surveys in the past. All right. Okay, so I'll go ahead and Jenna, do you have some questions that you want to discuss as we look through more of these that are coming in?
Sure. I know, and some of this was probably covered a little bit in the presentation as well, but a couple questions coming in about understanding which questions pertain to your company. So as they showed, you can use that question preview tool to get a better understanding of which questions you actually need to answer. Also in the spreadsheet itself, there are going to be cells that are shaded gray, and that means that a response is not required for that particular item for you, if that's the case when you're in there. There was a question about getting assistance with completing the survey. So we'll have some information about that when you get your letter, but beginning Friday, once you receive your email or your letter inviting you to respond, you can sign into your Census Bureau account. You can send a secure message. We really encourage the secure messaging there. There's a customer helpline that will be available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also on the AIES website that we have provided, you can get updates or new information. A link will be posted next week there so that you can subscribe to get AIES updates. So that'll be, updates, news, promotional activity around that. If you subscribe, you'll get you can get updates for that and kind of stay abreast of what's going on with the survey. Extensions were mentioned. Let's see. Oh, this was a navigation question that came up. Some of you might have participated in some of the testing or interviews and previous iterations of the survey. You will be able to navigate back and forth through the survey between the different steps. That's one improvement that we made sure to get in before going live with this version. So you should be able to, if you start to answer some and you want to go back and check something or update something, you should be able to do that.
There were some questions that came through about if this survey included the ABS, the annual business survey, or the R&D survey. So I do want to clarify that the AIES does not include those surveys. Those are separate surveys. So those are not included. It's only those 7 surveys that are listed on this slide. Yeah, so then also as far as, let's see, for the, as far as the questions that are coming in about the survey questions that we are asking folks in the survey, as it was mentioned earlier, what you complete in steps 1 and steps 2 do drive the spreadsheet for step 3, and those drive the creation of the questions that pertain to your company. So if you are in like the healthcare industries, then the questions that are generated in that step 3 will be specific to your company. There may be other questions included in there, but those cells will be grayed out so that you know that those don't apply to you.
Linda, I did see one question. Where did it go? Maybe you covered this. Will the due date change, or will it be April 30th going forward if it will change year to year? I guess to that, I'll say this is year 1. I think as we evolve and get more comfortable with this, we'll try to get into a comfortable cadence on, not only the due date and when we're mailing out, but just also the content overall. I mean, just again, I would caution that the first year was about getting this integration done, and I think we have a lot of ideas for improving the whole experience in the years to come. So I can't necessarily, I would say that it might change a bit. I don't know that we want to mail in March every year. I know for the annuals, a lot of them we mailed a little earlier in January and February. So those are things that I think we will keep in mind. So I certainly don't want to hold us to April 30th being the due date every year. I think that due date is generally based on when we mail out. So more to come there. I would say this might be, barring anything unforeseen, the latest that we'd like to mail out, but we'll see how it goes as we get into a comfortable cadence here.
Another question I wanted to jump in real quick. We've had a couple of people ask about contact updates. If the main contact has changed, how do we provide that information? Let us know. There will be an opportunity to give us that contact information if we already have it. Be patient though. The letters that are going out on Friday have already been, or Friday and into next week, have already been printed with the current contacts we have. So if you get that and your contact hasn't been updated, don't worry, we will get that in as soon as possible. And so any of the follow-up correspondence will have the new contact and go to the right place.
Here's when will the census be releasing AIS data? So our current plan is we're looking into, let's say, summer of 2025 right now. And again, this is our first year doing this. So trying to get into a comfortable cadence. This is such a vast amount of information that we're getting at one time. So that's what we're planning right now. And again, I think this will evolve as we get more comfortable with a bunch of new processes and new ways of doing things with the survey. Any other generic? Not necessarily generic.
So there was another question that came in about sharing survey access. In the past, there were multiple contacts for the different surveys, and will they be able to share access with those folks? And so the answer to that is yes. So from that once you log into the portal and you get your survey card that was shown in the presentation, it says share survey access. So you can delegate to different folks in your company for those so that they can have access to the survey. There was also a question that came through about a company that has multiple locations in different states and wondering if they only had to provide company level data. So as you navigate through the AIES, you will see that there is specific data that is needed for each location. There are there's a few core items that we're requesting from the location. So there will be a level of data that we are requesting at the company level, and then at the industry, and then the location level. So the spreadsheet has it laid out nicely so that you can see exactly what we're asking for from each location.
Okay, it's just a couple more here as we get towards the 12 o'clock. We don't want to keep you. Will this survey replace only annual surveys or quarterly surveys as well? Right now, it's just the annual surveys. And again, just to reiterate those surveys, it's the annual capital expenditure survey. You can see it, but it's probably hard to read, so I'll read it. The annual retail trade survey, the annual survey of manufacturers, the annual wholesale trade survey, the manufacturer's unfilled orders survey, the report of organization, and the service annual survey. Those are the 7 surveys that have combined into one. I was going to make an 80s cartoon reference, but I won't do that here. That are combining into one for this AIS. Okay, I don't want to go past 12, and I think Lisa might want to say a couple of things. The last note that I'll have, again, thank you guys again. We really appreciate your interest and your participation, asking questions, just wanting to get guidance on how to best complete this survey. It'll be starting out next week. I do want to reiterate that after you close the webinar, you will get prompted to fill out a short evaluation survey. Again, we really value your feedback, and we want to use any information gleaned from the evaluation to help us in future guidance and webinars and other forms of contact with you. So with that, I think I'll pass it off to Lisa. Thank you guys again.
Can I just jump in really quick? I'm
Okay.
sorry. I just want to reiterate that the survey is not open right now. It will open March 15th and beyond. So if you have the link to the respondent portal or that 1-800 number that we showed today, those are not active yet. So those will open in a couple days, but right now they're not open. So just give it a few days. You'll get your authentication code in the mail, and once you have that, then you'll be able to get into the survey. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank our presenters today and the panelists for entertaining all the questions that have been coming in, but especially want to thank all of you for attending. This is, as you can see, a large-scale change for the Census Bureau, and I know this will require changes on your end, and we are here for you to support those efforts. I'm glad to see all the tools that we walk through today. We've been working hard to ensure that you're all prepared for this endeavor as we move forward. But I just want to really thank everybody and just stress what Eddie just said, that we are evolving. This is going to be a little bit of a work in progress as we're looking to gather feedback. And, we want those constructive criticisms on things that could be done a little differently, because given the large scale nature of the AIS, we absolutely are looking for continuous improvement. So I thank all of you for your attendance today and your patience with us, and keep the questions coming, and we'll do our best to answer those in ways that the masses can benefit from the response. So I thank everybody, and please look forward to please fill out the evaluation like Eddie said. So thank you.
That concludes today's session. You may disconnect at this time. Have a good afternoon, everyone.